Okay, guys, so today we're talking about the Kira network, where decentralized finance is, and the issues with staking. Then we'll talk about the token economics, talk about the cash tokens, the incentives, and the hubs, and other parameters in this network. So where we are right now is actually how do we secure blockchain networks, because it's not enough that we have systems that people can use. Can we actually secure the network? That is where proof of work comes in. But we've seen the drawbacks to proof of work. It consumes so much energy. They reduce something this stuff with cost, cartels, and centralization. And you have to have access to ship power and the rest of them. That is where they brought the proof of stake. So proof of stake is very, very good, but proof of stake has its own flaws in the sense that there is most of the times there is minimum and amount that you have to have, and then there is the lock-in. Though locking it away from the market some of the times is good for certain reasons, like it helps curb volatility and all that. But it's not really good for the average person, because you are locking your funds and your funds are not accessible. What Kira network is all about, and it's actually a system where if you stake your tokens, irrespective of whatever tokens they are, it could be fiat, it could be non fungible tokens, it could be stable coins, it could be other kind of tokens, like Ethereum and the rest of them, they will issue you a liquid derivative of it that is transferable, that is tradable, that you can do anything with it across different platforms. And that is what the Kira network is about. So, but one of the problems is that another problem with proof of stake is that if we want, for example, Ethereum needs there is a need for 32 Ether to be able to be a validator on the network. So to get access to these coins, you need most of the times to get a purchase from a centralized exchange. And that is where Kira comes in. Let's change the narrative with that. So Kira is built on 8 core principles. One of them is security, liquidity, utility, scalability, upgradability, interoperability, and then expansibility. So for security, it uses what we call the multi-bonded proof of stake network. So what that means is that unlike normal systems where for you to stake Ethereum, you just need Ethereum tokens. For the Kira network, you can stake your you can stake on the network with any kind of tokens, and it does not require any amount, so it's not capped and all that. The next thing is liquidity, of which we'll talk about staking derivatives. So once you deposit any kind of coin, let's say BTC, for example, they will issue you SBTC. So this SBTC is on a 1-to-1 ratio. So this is locked. If you do anything that is malicious or there is downtime or some errors, if it is slashed, it will also reflect on this, because it's on a 1-to-1 basis. Now for the utility, which we'll talk about when we get to the protocol, it's actually a system where we can transact in a decentralized fashion. And then for scalability, we'll talk about governance and all manner of things. For upgradability, we'll talk about how do we make the network self-sustainable, how do we talk about development, contracting, and all that. And then for interoperability is how do we bridge this network to other systems like Polkadot, Cosmos, and the rest of them. That's what we're talking about, the Internet of Blockchain, and then the cross-chain messaging protocol. And then for accessibility, we'll talk about how can platforms connect to the network in such a way that they will be able to raise funds. So let's dive into everything. So for the consensus, unlike other systems, this network, if you are a staker on the platform, irrespective of whatever amount you stake on the platform, whether you have 32 Ether or you have 1 Ether or whatsoever, every single person has equal rights. When it comes to voting, every single person has equal chance when it comes to the proposing of new blocks. Note that. The next thing again is the permission entry and exit. So on this network, you cannot just enter a validator set. No, you have to be given certain permissions, and you cannot just leave like that. And then to curb the issues with forming cartels and malicious behavior, the people who are validators on the network, they have to be identifiable, and most of the times they are active community members. Now the next thing again is a code of conduct. So the code of conduct is something like the service layer agreement. So you are saying that this network that I'm actually joining, I promise to be of good faith and all that. So for governance on the network, there is something called rules, roles, and then councils. So for the rules is that only whitelisted actors in the network can actually execute permissions. Then number two, for permissions, those who are assigned roles can only execute roles that they are permissions to do, to actually assign. And now for roles, so roles are basically is a collection of permissions in the network. So permissions to do X, Y, or Z. And then the next platform talk about councils. So for councils, it proposes two approaches. One like the multi-camera system of governance, and then where people can actually be represented. And then it also proposes a system where there is this separation of powers in the network. So in such a way that one part of the network checkmates, like separation of powers, one part of the network checkmates other part of the network. And that is what we'll talk about. Some of the councils in the network. We have the operators in the network that serve like the executive council of then we'll talk about the others like the proposal councils, like legislations in normal world. Then we'll talk about the electorate council. These are people who are shame conscious people on the network. And then we'll have the voting, which is like the judicial council on the network. So let's talk about how do we resolve faults in the network. So most of the times, most network, they actually penalize delegators. No, it's not supposed to be so, because a delegator is someone that that actually they don't have the resources, or maybe they don't have the time or whatsoever. So they are like saying they are staking and their name behind somebody who has the miss. So if at the end of the day probably there is a failure or whatsoever, the validator who is like you giving a job to a person, that person should be punished. So in this network, it penalizes validators and not delegators, and then it removes bad actors. So in the network, it forgives stuff like downtime, but when for delegators, but when validators are actually are having downtimes, they are removed from the network. And then if validators try to do double signing, that is, you want to do something like a hard fork or fork the system, they are actually removed from the network. And then if they are slashed, if their assets are slashed, those assets are not burnt, they're actually sent to a community pool. So this community pool, the network can now vote on what they want to do with the funds that are in the system. So they can decide to say, okay, we want to use it to reward maybe fishermen or reimburse people that have some issues. And the next thing is decentralized development. So what it brings to the system is, how do we get the system up and running? So it employs what we call the on-chain contracting system, where there is a contract for when do we want a job to be completed. There is a time frame, there is the amount, and then there is a task. And then with this kind of system, which Kira will be using to launch the network, and then with this kind of system, we can avoid the massive sellouts. Like most of the platforms, if they raise money and they sell their tokens or whatsoever to build the system, there is that large movement in price. We can actually curb stuff like this. So the exchange protocol is that for Kira Network, there is a decentralized application that you can use to actually trade things like POS tokens, can use to trade the derivatives that may arise from this platform. So these are derivatives that you can use it to trade it back and forth and all that. Now for this exchange protocol, when it comes to accessibility, unlike many blockchain systems where they use a kind of set of APIs to actually make when they are serving you this network to make it fast, it uses the blockchain. So for secure access, you already have access to decentralized tools that you can be able to use to access the platform. And then for scalability is in twofold. We have market sharding, and then we have interchain. Oh yeah. So for ownership, when tokens are listed on the platform, it's not just you just come and list tokens, and then platforms like Uniswap are dealing with fake tokens. No, and there is a process for the listing of tokens on this network. And then for liquidity is that it has liquidity pools, and that you can put tokens and get reward, and then you can get staking derivatives also. So for legal compliance also, anybody it allows what we call the selective DApp execution. So you can say, I want to execute this kind of DApps, and in the future it will use some DID, which is called decentralized identity, to help with stuff like this. So let's quickly talk about the ecosystem. So the hub is the Kira network itself. Zones are actually platforms on it, and then bridges are a kind of system where we can connect to other systems like IBC, using IBC and SCMP. And then for the cash, let's talk about the cash token. So the cash token, it will be the native staking asset on the network. It will be used as a reserve currency where other assets on the network are valued, and then it will be used to pay for network fees. So for the there is something for holders. Holding this token, you get to pay less fees, and for delegators, you get to reward as a delegator, and then for the validators, you also get some reward. So let's talk about the last thing, which is called the IVO. So the IVO is called the initial validator offerings. So what that means is that, unlike ICOs where you send your coins to a platform and they issue and they get you some coins in return, no, this time you are staking your coins as like a validator, and then there are rewards that are being you get tokens being minted to you. So it allows for trustless locking. You can exit anytime. There's no KYC and there's no fears of SEC and other. So that is a brief about the Kira network. It's here to make any kind of token, coins, stable coins, or whatsoever staking. So it is trying to make staking liquid. Thank you.